Well, welcome everybody, and I was going to go around and have everybody introduce themselves, but there's just the three of us here now, so what do you think, Chris?
Yeah, let's do it with the group here.
Okay.
Todd wasn't here last week, so.
Yeah.
I'm still Joe Gordon. I work for the government in a weird way, for National Guard for federal law enforcement. And I have a bachelor's and master's in public administration, BYU. I have 5 kids I love to pieces and that's it.
Awesome.
Todd?
Todd Hadley, a longtime Provo Orem resident, and I've been in Orem since I got married back in '91. So, I do computers and networking. Currently, I work for a company by the name of One Medical, and we own about 210 doctors' offices spread throughout the United States, and my job is to make sure that we get fiber to all of them.
Okay.
So Todd joined the commission back when we were really diving deep into the health of Utopia and its direction and how to deploy it, accelerate its deployment and so forth. And today, at this point, we're almost fully deployed, at least with the backbone in the city of Orem.
Getting really close.
Yeah. So, so that's one of the things that this commission has done. I don't know if you knew that, Joe, but yeah. And quite frankly, we're not involved with it, but we were asked to. This committee was asked to bounce some ideas off each other and brainstorm some solutions and so forth because of its technical nature. So I took that as a compliment to really, a compliment to everybody and their competency and their ability to think through challenging issues, because that was one of the biggest challenging issues we've had as a city. So
Lots and lots of opinions, lots and lots of options.
yeah. So Chris Tschirki, Public Works Director.
April Nielson, Public Works Administrative Assistant and PWAC Secretary.
And Jim Michaelis, I'm retired now, life's good, and I used to be the Associate VP at UVU for facilities and everything else that was going on physically at the
All the physical facilities at UVU.
yeah, all the construction, parking, police, anything that anybody didn't want, that was mine. So, good. How about your staff?
Yeah, let's introduce staff as well. Let's start with Reed and then go around.
My name is Reed Price. I'm the Assistant Public Works Director. I've been with the city since, I started my career in 1998. Left the city for a brief period for 7.5 years. Was the Director of the Utah Lake Commission. Came back in 2015 over the Maintenance Division, and I'm now over the water resources, so water, sewer, and stormwater.
Excuse me. My name's Tyler Peay. I'm the Public Services Division Manager. Been with the city for 14 years in the water section, and just recently moved over to Bill Reed's role as the Maintenance Division Manager. They changed that title recently, so that's what we're doing.
I'm Cody Steggell. I'm the Street Section Manager. Been with QUORAM for 28 full-time years, 32 total, so been a long time.
My name's Quinn Fenton. I'm Water Section Manager, new to my position, but worked for the city for 26 years. All but one of those years has been in the water section. I started as a part-time employee down the wastewater plant.
Rick Sabey, Stormwater Section Manager. Been with the city now for 30 years, been here quite a while.
I'm Steve Johnson. I'm the Public Works GIS lead, or Geographic Information Systems lead. But I've worked in stormwater for 24 years full-time and another 3 years as an intern. So I do a lot of the map infrastructure work.
Good. Great. Well, appreciate getting to know everybody a little bit better. And I guess we can't really consider the approval of the minutes. We don't have a quorum here, so
That's
we'll pass
correct.
that right now.
Yeah.
Chris, we'll turn the rest of the time to you then.
Okay, so we do have a modification in our schedule or agenda today. We were going to have Cody and his GIS lead present on streets today. His GIS lead, Grant, no,
Jet.
it was Jet, sorry. Jet was called to jury duty, but at the last minute, they had everything worked out, so we did a pivot, and I asked Rick to present on this with Steve Johnson regarding our stormwater section. But in Public Works, and I think I need to do this with everybody, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here, maybe at our next meeting when we have a full quorum at least. But we have 7 sections altogether. So Cody is over our street section, and then Quinn is over our water section, Rick is over our stormwater section, and then we have 4 other sections that aren't represented here today. But traffic operations, which has to do with our interconnect with our fiber to all of our signals. We have about 35 signals in the city that are owned and operated by Orem, and then several others that are operated and owned by UDOT. So that's managed through that section. They also manage street lighting. Then we also have a park section. Jim Orr is our park section manager. Taylor Forbush is our traffic operations section manager. In parks, the parks section manages not just parks and those facilities, including the bathrooms and making sure that everything is clean and operated and maintained properly, but also all of the landscaping and so forth, as you can imagine, and all the field preparation for softball, for baseball, for soccer, and other sports that are played at those facilities. Then we also have, in our fleet section, we have Thane Carter, and he's over 5 fleet mechanics in that section. We manage, I don't know, what's our rolling stock, Reed and Tyler? We have around 300?
Yeah.
Probably.
350.
Not to mention all of the small equipment that we have here too. So mowers, edgers, trimmers, larger mowers, smaller mowers, blowers, saws, and so forth. They do maintenance on all of that equipment as well. And did I miss anyone?
Giles.
Oh, water reclamation.
They met him last time.
And you met Giles last time. I think or you weren't here, but you know Giles.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Giles is our water reclamation section manager, and the biggest challenge that Giles has right now is getting this water reuse project off the ground and moving forward. We've been working with him recently and doing some value engineering with our consulting engineer, and also with the low bidder on the project, which was Archer Western. That was originally bid in January, and we're looking to award it now after doing some negotiating and after acquiring about $10 million in grants through the county, through ARPA money, and then also an earmark through federal grant as well. So it looks like we're going to be able to start that project here in the next couple of months. So that's kind of a general overview. Those are the 7 sections that we have here in the Public Works. And what we wanted to do over the course of the next 6 months or so, or the next 6 meetings, is go into a good overview of every one of the sections. And so I've asked Rick and Steve to present on stormwater today. And so I'll turn the rest of the meeting over to Rick and Steve. Any questions in general regarding Public Works? The overview that was just given? Okay.
Well, just when it's time to come on. As we go through these slides and whatever, like Chris said, it's kind of an overview of the stormwater. We'll have time for questions at the end, but please feel free to ask questions as we go. We'll just kind of give you a little bit of an overview of what we do with the stormwater section and kind of where we're going with that. So please feel free to ask questions as we go. I guess we'll just go ahead and jump right in. Do you have any questions before we start about stormwater in general, or kind of what our responsibilities are that we can address, or we just want to go through the presentation and see where we go with it? Okay, this is the way the section is set up currently. As the section manager, we have, and then down here we have 6 public works technicians. 2, Jason and Ryan's been assigned to be kind of on an inspection crew. Connor and Blaine has been assigned to be on a maintenance or a construction crew. Now we switch these back and forth quite a bit because they, instead of having to do the same thing every day, and sometimes when you go out and do a construction project, it'll take extra people, so they switch back and forth. Bryce and Talon over here, public works technicians, are our full-time street sweeping crew. The street sweepers fall under the umbrella of the stormwater section. And Andy and Darren, of course, is our crew leaders that oversees the crews they see. We have a vacant field supervisor position. Steve, you met Steve over here. He's our GIS lead and GIS specialist. And then we have 2 specialty program managers. Danny works the SWPPP, and Chelsea with long-term stormwater management. And we'll kind of talk a little bit about their responsibilities, everyone's responsibilities as we go through this. Just real quick, what we're trying to do is to minimize the negative impacts of the increased stormwater flows and runoffs. And I got some pictures that kind of shows that here a little bit. We as a section review all the developments and redevelops in the city as they come through, make sure they're in compliance with the NPDES, UPDES regulations. We have approximately 92 miles of storm drain that we maintain, 1,848 sumps, 1,729 manholes, 3,272 drain inlets, and 28 diversion structures, along with, there's a total of 48 detention bases in the city. Not all of them are improved. There's 19 of that 48 that's unimproved. We as a utility maintain 9 of them, and the balance is either, well, the balance between this 18 and 48, the park section kind of mows for us. We got some, you've seen some basins out in some parks, like up here at Bonneville and down in Springwater, so the park sections mows those for us. But these here, multi-use basins, the city mows, and there's this many unimproved. There's some of those around. You've probably seen some, like on 8th South and 12th West. They're not used as a multi-use basin, but they're definitely a stormwater basin. In fact, there's one right over here behind this Chevron station you've probably seen as you come in. We have to work closely with the irrigation companies. We've used their facilities for a lot of years, putting water in to take care of the storm water. We're trying to take that out. Some of them irrigation companies are actually going away now, so that's kind of changed our focus and our priorities a little bit to try to get some of our storm waters out of those canals. And then they depend on us to kind of help them do some maintenance under the streets where they can't get to it. And they use our facilities to dump water back out of their canals and take it in our storm drain system in a few different locations as well. Of course, we have a GIS component. Steve's kind of working with that. We do install some of our own grade projects, the smaller projects, the sumps and stuff. Like I mentioned, maybe we manage the street sweeper operations. We have to comply with UPDS permit, and we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. And then we work with engineering for our plans, and our CIP project is coming up.
Rick, can you go back to that one?
Absolutely.
Can you explain what the UPDES means and what that is, why it's important?
Yeah. This could be a 4-hour history session, but we'll take the 30 seconds. The 30 seconds. It started way back in the 40s actually, and then in 72 they Congress passed another act, and then it kind of morphed into the Clean Water Act. What was it called before that? Do you remember? It was something different.
You weren't born yet, right?
He was really young. Anyway, starting in 72, they passed an act to become the Clean Water Act, and that's when stormwater kind of got going. The EPA was created about the same time, and
I thought there were no rules until the Clean Water Act.
well, there's probably no rules that was followed, but there was rules.
Well, if you lived in Cleveland, there probably wasn't any rules.
Is that where the river is on fire?
Yeah.
Talladega River or whatever. So anyway, that went to the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System. That's kind of when that started. other cities in Utah started getting involved more in the early 90s. It was what they called Phase 1 and Phase 2. Phase 1 was designated for entities. It was 100,000 people at that time or larger, so that was Salt Lake City and Salt Lake County. They're the only ones that come into Phase 1. Phase 2 come in with all the cities smaller than that. They originally went to 50,000, but since they've lowered that down to where most of the cities along the Wasatch Front has a UPDS permit. And the state of Utah applied for and gained primacy, and so we report to the state of Utah, who reports to the EPA. There are a few states that reports directly to the EPA, but Utah has primacy on that. So UPDES stands for Utah Pollution Discharge Elimination System. It's a permitting system that cities that gets designated to be brought in has to obtain a permit, the stormwater discharge permit, so we have permission basically to discharge into the waters of the state. And then as part of that permit, there's conditions we have to meet. And we've got a slide in a few minutes that's going to show that a little more clearly.
How many, and then on sweeping operations, I found this quite interesting when I learned this, but the city tries to run sweepers down every gutter at least how many times a year?
Well, the most we've gotten one year is about 14 times. Now we're talking public streets and non-UDOT streets here. But we probably average between 10 and 12 annually. It just kind of depends on the year and how much debris there is, and if we've had someone retire and that kind of stuff. It takes a minute to bring some people up to speed, but yeah, we get down the streets quite a bit. And that, if we've called different cities around the county, and we have about as aggressive a street sweeper program as exists in the state of Utah. So we keep sweepers out there every day. There's 2 full-time sweepers when weather permits through the summer. We have 3 sweepers, but 2 full-time operators. We use the 3rd one to kind of rotate through for breakdowns and odds and ends. And in the fall of the year, when the leaves start coming here in a couple of weeks, we'll have 3 sweepers out full-time.
That's pretty impressive in my mind that, you know, in front of your house, you're going to have a sweeper about on average once a month. And of course, you know, there are cars parked and we drive around them and then we come back the next month and hopefully it's moved and whatever. But, yeah, but you know, some engineers will say a street network isn't for traffic, it's a stormwater conveyance system. And if you think about it, all of the pollutants that could run off of a street include things not just like grit and grime and dirt and things like that, but also oils and grease. And then heavy metals and so forth from brakes and things like that. So over time, over the last 100+ years in the city, when it turned from a field to what we have today, it's changed a lot in terms of pollution that we humans have introduced to this area. So that's why this is so critical and important.
Thank you. We'll get to the slide in a minute.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'd like to add something to that. Just so you know, there is an online map for the sweeper too, so if you want to see like their progress throughout the month,
We'll show them that here in a minute as well.
Oh, good.
Lost my train of thought now. Oh, we'll see this slide in a minute that shows that last year we picked up about 2,700 cubic yards of debris with sweepers. And, you know, it's kind of funny. Sometimes one day I got a call that said, what's the sweepers doing out? They're not doing any good. They're not picking anything up, you know, even though they picked up like 6 yards that day. And get a call the same day. So we sure appreciate the sweepers coming out, you know, so we get the whole spectrum. The same day we get the same thing. Or it's exactly opposites. But that material, that 2,700 yards, if we didn't sweep it up, it would go down the storm drain, into the sumps and down in the pipes, and it's very difficult and expensive to remove. So it's a very cost-effective program to keep that material out of our storm drain system and the environment, as Chris talked about. And
Is it sent to the city dump, all the collected waste?
It doesn't go to the dump, the city dump. We do haul it out to Fairfield, out to a dump out there. And the reason for that is just the difference in cost. This down here is, you know, it's under $30 a ton. Out there, they're letting us dump for $3 a ton. We got the additional transport fees, so it's quite a difference in the price to take it out there. So we take it out there. In fact, I think we got someone hauling that out today, perhaps, if there's a truck available. Chris talked a minute ago about the development of the city over the last 20 or 30 years, and this is kind of what we're seeing is we're getting more of this and less of this. This is 8 South, and Costco is just down here at the bottom. So right here, there's a McDonald's that's going in, it's being developed, you know, and up here it's Quench It, a drink place, and we're just getting fewer and fewer areas where where water can soak into the ground. It's hitting that impervious surface, and it makes it more difficult to preserve the water quality and protect the health of the citizens and the environment in general. Here's just kind of a quick diagram or picture here that kind of shows you the difference between what the natural environment is versus the urban environment. Natural environment, you get about a 40% evaporation, where urban you get about a 30%. Shallow infiltration, 25%, deep infiltration, 25%, and over here you're down to 10 and 5. But the difference here is the runoff. About 55% of an urbanized environment is direct runoff, where only about 10% of a natural environment. So we just keep gaining more and more impervious surface, and that's kind of why some of the regulations are changed. We can talk about that in a minute as well. This is down at the bottom of the Spring Water Park. This is the detention basin down there. I don't know if you're familiar with that area, but this road's existed for years, and we never had any water crossing that for, I don't know, 10 or 15 years. Then about 3 years ago, we started having water cross that. And it's just from them little parcels upstream getting developed. You know, UDOT changed Geneva Road, and that changed some impervious surface, but we had the apartments that's on the east side of Geneva Road, all this development, and we connected this into a pipe that went up Center Street. So this takes water clear from 8th West and Center Street. It's a big drainage area. But about, like I said, 3 years ago, we started having to cross the road there. We'd never had that before. And it's just all the development, you know, just slowly, and pretty quick, we're starting to have problems like this. Now, this problem's been fixed. They replaced a bigger pipe and put it out here and went into what's Clegg's Pond over here. So this issue's been taken care of, but that's kind of just an example of slow development. It just builds and builds and builds until finally you have problems. These trucks here are kind of the backbone of our maintenance efforts, and of course they have the vacuum that they're very powerful vacuums, and then they have the high pressure hose reel up here on front as well that they can use to clean pipes, and we'll talk about that just a little bit on the next slide. But it's just a picture of a pipe with some water and debris in the bottom of it, and of course they use the hose reels here to clean that out, so we don't have to put people down into those pipes to do any of that kind of stuff. And even the manholes, the vacuums will vac out dirt and debris. They're very powerful. If you don't know how a jet rotor works, it's just kind of a quick picture. It throws water out the back, you know, then the trucks will run all 3,000 PSI. They put a lot of pressure out, and it puts enough of a backwards pressure on that it thrusts the jet frontwards, and it'll pull 500 feet of hose up a pipe like that. It's pretty good pressure. It'll pull that up, and then as you bring it back, it brings the debris with it. And so that's kind of how them jet rotors work, with no one getting down there, and you can shoot back and forth. And you don't just shoot through once and pull it back. You have to go back and forth and back and forth. And it eventually gets all the debris out of that. We have an inspection crew we talked about a minute ago, and this is kind of some of the stuff we've been seeing. You can see in this picture that's a torpedo from a horizontal boring company, and then we've got one over here. I'm not even sure what this utility is. There's actually 3 lines there, one you can't see on the back, but these types of things, if we don't have a regular inspection program, they happen all the time. We're getting more and more horizontal boring, and we never know about it. You know, if they hit a water line, they know about it quickly. If they hit a sewer line, they generally know pretty quick, because people have backups. But this here could be this way for years. This one over here, water might run through there for years and years until we get one piece of debris down there, whether it's a sack that had some landscaping material in it, the bark and stuff. We see a lot of those, or ice melt material we get, and then it plugs it off and hooks things up.
And so what do you do when you've got that?
This here, we will blue stake it, find out whose it is, and then call them and have them come back and fix it.
And redo it then.
You'll have to dig it up and go over, under, and repair the pipe.
If
and
you
the
want
company's been pretty good to do that.
If you want to find out quickly who it is, though, we just cut it.
Yeah.
And then all of your fiber to UVU goes out.
Yes.
No, we don't do that. We don't do that.
But say, do you actually do that?
No.
We do have a root cutter.
We tease
go
about
through
it.
and would do that, you know, so that's why it's important to kind of look at it before you do that, because you could run into problems.
So do they not have, like, when people do this horizontal drilling, do they not have some kind of idea that pipe is in the ground, or is it?
Yes, well, yes and no. I mean, there's things that's out there that people don't know about, obviously, and the city tries to blue stake and mark the irrigation ditches as a courtesy, even though we don't own them. But there's some that we're not even aware of. So some things don't get marked, and other times, just through carelessness, they are marked, and they'll just hit them, thinking they're hoping they go under them or over them. And I think they figure that it's probably cheaper to come back and do a repair than it is to pothole every single utility. So they kind of just go through that process. But it happens. We see quite a bit of this.
Well, and sometimes I found that, like for instance, I had blue stakes out to my house, and I used to work with blue stakes a lot with Alpine School District, and I every time they showed up, I would come out and I would physically walk it with them, because blue stakes is pretty good, but there's a number of times where they're like, okay, here's where it is, and I'm like, no, it's not. It's right over here. And I'd say, if you dig here, you will hit. If you dig, you're 5 feet off, and 5 feet is a huge difference.
Yeah,
And
there's a huge challenge in being able to map underground facilities, because in stormwater, generally we think it goes from manhole to manhole in a straight line. And 99% of the time we're right, but occasionally there'll be a bend in it that we didn't know about. So, yeah, blue stakes is good, and they're probably as good as they could be, but there are some challenges that are just very difficult to overcome.
And that's why, like I said, because I happen to know physically where that fiber is, because I was the one who put it in. So I'll go out there and meet them there and say, no, don't trust the yellow line, trust the
They've been pretty good to work with us to get them out, but it does happen.
Yeah, and
No question.
like I said, they do a really good job, but it's not always 100%.
Correct.
Yeah, the other thing is, when I talk about a bend, sometimes it's a horizontal bend, but if it's a vertical bend, that's really hard to go, and that's what they're dealing with on those horizontal bores is, well, how deep is that pipe? Generally, it's gonna be a straight line, but sometimes it's not.
It's a challenge. Maintenance crews moving on also work with the preventive maintenance. They coordinate with Steve quite a bit. A lot of emergency response. They're involved also with the snow and ice control. And then I've left the pen off there. And they help with the turf grass and detention basins as well. Here's just a picture of a crew installing a sump. This can here will have holes in it to dissipate water into the subsurface soils there. And this here's a pre-treatment manhole that we put in to kind of keep some of the pollutants out of the sump and out of being injected back into the soils. We've been doing that since probably putting the pre-treatment manhole probably since the very late 90s. Prior to that, it didn't happen a lot. Here's just a picture of a couple of multi-use basins. This was up on 2000 North, just a little bit east of Main Street. And this is actually Bonneville Park over here. It's a big basin down in here that holds quite a bit of water.
Has anyone ever seen water in that Bonneville
I have.
Park? Yeah, right. I know you have.
I don't think I have. But
No? Because you live up in that northern part.
yeah,
but
I mean,
you've seen
that's-
it maybe, or
That's the part
yeah.
we use.
Yeah. And so sometimes you'll see kids out there with like a raft or something if there's a storm event. So it's detaining the water, just doesn't allow it to flow through. So there's a restriction on these ponds, and it forces the water to back up. You might wonder, well, why is that? Well, because it's taking off the peak flow from the downstream where it exits that pond, and therefore we don't have to build as big of a pipe network, in terms of size of diameter of pipe on the downstream, because
So
we
really
reduce the
what
flows.
it's doing is just slowing it down,
Yes,
giving the
it's-
water a place to go temporarily.
Yes, it's detaining it, it's not retaining it in most detention basins.
Got it.
Exactly right. Thanks for that clarification. This one here does retain a little bit. This has an underground series of horizontal sumps that goes under that park. There's like 5 or 6 of them that goes from one end clear to the other. So when the water comes in, it goes through those perforated pipes into a gravel pack and then goes out. But there is an outflow here at a little bit higher elevation. It can't overflow and let some water out. We got 2 parks built with these underground horizontal sump systems in them. Sweeper operations. Here's what we talked about earlier. Last year they swept 4,700 lane miles of road. There's about 500 gutter line miles. I think Jet told me yesterday is 244 center line miles. So there's about 500 gutter line miles. And in 2021 they picked up about 2,700 cubic yards of debris. that otherwise would have went into the sumps. That's quite a bit. That's a lot of debris that we can save. The vast majority of that volume is leaves, there's no question about it. But even so far this year, this cycle, they've got about almost 800 cubic yards of debris. That wouldn't be hardly any leaves. It's almost all silts and stuff. And
So when I'm
otherwise,
raking my leaves, I can just put them into the gutter there.
it's funny you ask that, because you can talk to the sweeper guys with us here that say that happens way more than you think. They see them go down one side of the street, somebody will run in their garage and get their blower and start blowing it out the road. So it does happen. But no, we ask people not to do that.
There's a funny video out there about a reaction of a storm or sweeper operator who comes back out and blows on the lawn. On the lawn. You don't do that.
This is just the stock picture, but it kind of talks about some of Steve's responsibilities as GIS specialist. You want to go over what your responsibilities, kind of what you do, Steve?
Yeah, so with GIS, you're able to tie some attribute values to a location, and that's kind of your full picture of what an asset looks like. So with an inlet, for example, you can define what type of hardware is on the top, whether it's a round grate or it's a curb face inlet. That allows for maintenance crews to be able to know what kind of hardware they might need to replace when they get there. You also can track the depth, the material, and based on the different attributes, you can start to put a model together and say, well, the expected life of a concrete pipe is 75 years or whatever it might be. That way you can come up with a maintenance and a replacement plan for all of your infrastructure. This product here that Rick has brought up is called Elements, and there's been a lot of investment in that over the past couple of years, so that we'll be able to not only track the work that needs to be done, but track the hours that the folks are there, track the wear and tear on our equipment as well, and track materials that are used for certain repairs or maintenance. And so that's the basic idea. The other thing is just, like you said, location. That allows for people to plan properly, whether it's for a capital improvement project. When Center Street had all that work done this year, the year before, we were putting in new sumps or taking sumps out of places where we're not supposed to have them anymore, just in preparation for that. And so that's a pretty common practice that we have with our capital improvement. There's movement beforehand, making sure that our underground infrastructure is in place, because we don't plan to touch that for several years after the new surface has been put in. But I'm not sure what else to say about that. What else do you think we need to cover there, Rick?
Are there any questions? These are all geographically located, and so that they're GPSed in, and so they're where they should be, and it just tracks everything as a certain location. It's kind of cool to have that information.
So those symbols on the map there refer to different types of work that needs to be done. The red ones indicate something needs to be cleaned, or there's like a couple of them look like hammers crossing. That means there's a repair. There's some yellow things that are indicating that things need to be GPSed in. There's some other things you can see quickly on there, but there's several things that we can track over time, get reports later, and be able to show what we have done.
So as an inspection crew goes out and inspects something, either the pipe or the sump or the manhole or whatever, if it needs some maintenance, they'll code something in up here, open a task on it, and then it'll change color. Then the maintenance crew can see which ones need to be addressed, and they'll go out and do those. And that's why there's so many veterans on. They see them, then we go out and kind of follow behind them and clean that up.
There's also some there that are red that are not our responsibility. They're on private property, but we still, for one reason or another, have been there on site and noticed that they need some attention, like in front of the Smiths.
and this is just kind of a snapshot, still shot of what we have seen live. The development review process, we as a section review all development, redevelopment projects that come through, so we sit on those committees. And the purpose of that is to make sure that what they're proposing to do on their site not only works with what they're going to do streetwise and their drainage that's already existing, but also that they're following the UPDES permit requirements. And they've kind of changed here recently. They've been changing progressively. The permit does that, but the biggest change most recently is all sites that's over 1 acre now have to retain the first half-inch of rain that falls. They can't let any of it go off site, so they have to retain it. So that's a big change. And you know, you working down at UVU, the ones that's been there for a long time haven't done that. But that would be a big change if you had to do that, go back and retrofit that. So it's a big deal. Steve?
Yeah, do you have a slide that talks about the impervious surface and how we build people?
I do not. If you want to check,
Okay.
go that real
That's
quick.
just the other big responsibility in my position is the way that we collect fees to fund our projects, our maintenance and everything is through stormwater fees, and they're based on impervious surface. So on a developed property, we use an aerial photograph to delineate all the rooftops, the sidewalks, parking lots, even in some cases hard-packed dirt. Those things are delineated out as being impervious, and for each 2,700 square feet of impervious surface, we charge a unit of stormwater fees.
I remember doing that a lot with you guys.
Yeah.
As well as the retention ponds.
Currently, the fee on that is $8 per unit, and so it's kind of significant to know that for businesses and churches and just anything that's not a non-single family residential property, usually their largest line item on a utility bill is their stormwater fees. But it is something that we need to be able to ensure that we're in compliance and that we're taking care of the risk that we have for property damage or potentially, damage or harm to health and well-being of people as well. So.
Split program. I'm sure you've all seen the silt fences and stuff out there that contractors or owners, property owners have to put up. So Danny, who's our SWIP program manager, has to go out and fill out these inspection reports. Currently in Orem, there's 49 open SWIP inspection sites.
Tell them what SWIP means.
Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan. And what that is thanks Reed, what that is a document that they have to create telling us how they're going to manage the pollutants and keep them on their site. The number one pollutant that leaves site is just total suspended solids, is dirt. And so it's that's kind of one of the ones that's more difficult to manage. Of course, they have to also address if they're going to have paint on site or fuels on site or oils on site or whatever else. They have to address that and tell us how they're going to keep that on site. Then Danny has to go out and inspect that on a monthly basis to make sure they're doing what they said they was going to do. Them documents are dynamic documents. They have to update them and keep changing them as their site changes. They might have a concrete washout on this side of the property early on the project, have to move it over here. So it's a dynamic document that changes. And there's some sites that require more than monthly inspections if they're in a high priority area, so close to a river or receiving water body, or they got slopes that's over a certain percentage, and they get 2 inspections a month from the city, and they have to be doing their own as well. So it's kind of a time-consuming thing, and it's something that they have to work with on a weekly basis. In 2019, 2020, and 2021, we did 650. Danny did 650, 646, and 607 SWIP inspections respectively. These numbers are actually going down just a little bit. I think the economy turned down a little bit. It's kind of slowed construction a little bit, as well as COVID kind of slowed things down a little bit towards the end. And so they're down just a little bit from what they was. They got to review the SWIPs prior to the start of construction and meet them on site. He also has to approve bond releases. We collect a bond to make sure that they do what they say they're doing. If they don't, we can stop work or even charge against that bond and have someone else clean it up and pay someone else to clean it up. They have to bring that bond back up before they can continue work. And he also works closely with this is actually a federal program. It's a computer program that the state has adopted. People, when they want a permit, they have to go online and file it. NOI, which stands for Notice of Intent. They intend to start a project. When they're complete, they have to file NOT, which is Notice of Termination. Saying they're going to complete that project, they're done. And when they do this, then the city gets notification through email, and we have to go out and conduct a final inspection. If they're done, then we can release it and close it out. If they're not, we have to say, okay, you still got this to clean up or this to deal with or whatever, and then they bring it up to compliance, and they can close it out. Also deals with the IDDE, which stands for Illicit Discharge Detection and Elimination. We have to have a program looking for those types of things. I got another slide, we'll talk about that in a minute. Long term, this is what Chelsea's currently doing. This happens to be at the Temple site here, and this is an inspection that she and I performed a week or so ago, where they're partway done. They're starting to do landscaping, so we went down and looked to make sure that their stormwater, their long-term stuff, meaning the stuff that's going to stay there forever, their underground detention facilities, their vegetation, their curb cuts, that they're all put in the way they was designed. You can see from the red marks, they have quite a few things that needs to be fixed before they can move on. And caught some of that before it's totally finished. It'll be easier for them to fix right now. She also helps with IDDEs, and then there's a lot of legal documents and maintenance agreements that needs to be signed by the property owner and kept and recorded at the county against the property. So just real quick, these properties have to be inspected forever now, every other year. And so there was a couple different options. The city could take on that responsibility, or the state give them an option to push that responsibility back to the property owner. But in doing so, we have to get them to sign a maintenance agreement saying they will do it and report back to us. And that's what the city's opted to do, so we don't have to go out and inspect every private property every other year. Kind of push that back on the property owner, so they do that. But the city still has to go out and do it every 5 years anyway. So that's kind of what the responsibilities of our long-term stormwater program manager is. We also have an education component where we have to teach the public, city employees, developers, property owners about what their responsibilities are. This here is just a biannual inspection Chelsea put together, or instructions to how to perform one anyway. So again, we teach city employees about illicit discharge detection, elimination, SOP trainings, SOPs, obviously standard operating procedures. We have to train the parks on what we've committed the state will do for fertilizer application or for grass clipping handling, that kind of stuff. So there's some training that has to go on there. And then of course, we use a design manual that we've put together to train property owners and developers on how to design their sites. Stormwater compliance, most of the people in stormwater are RSI certified, that stands for Registered Stormwater Inspector. And then they also got some NASCO certifications, some of us do, that teaches us how to inspect infrastructures in the road. It's just a standardized thing nationwide with the NASCO. So if we done an inspection and send it somewhere in New York, they'd be able to code it and tell us how bad the pipe was. We also work with some stormwater management plans. I've got a slide of that. In fact, let's go there. I think this is the slide after this one. This here is the page 1 of a 44-page permit, this UPDS permit, and it's 44 pages. It tells us what we have to accomplish. It doesn't tell us how to accomplish it. We have to figure that out ourselves, but tell us what we have to accomplish. And in this permit, there's like 6 areas. They call them MCMs, or minimum control measures, that we have to address. And this is what they are here: public education and outreach, public involvement, participation, illicit discharge detection and elimination, construction site stormwater runoff control, long-term stormwater management in new development, redevelopment, and pollution prevention and good housekeeping for municipal operations. Those are the 6 main points that we had to address from this 44-page permit. And this is what we've created as a stormwater management plan. This is actually an 88-page document responding back to the state saying, yeah, here's a permit you gave to us, here's our response, or this is what we propose to do to meet that permit. And so that's what this here is. It's a guidance document. Now we've prepared it, given it to the state. Now it guides us in what we do with maintenance. It tells us things like we need to inspect things 20% a year. So every 5 years, you're seeing all the infrastructure, that type of stuff. Recent storm drain projects. This is down at the Taylor Drain. We had a contractor come in and dig this out to the lake. This is something that's been an ongoing project for a lot of years. This pipe was put in, or the pipe where it ends upstream from here was put in with the University Mall back in the 70s, and the city's under obligation to dig this out. That's been a problem with Army Corps of Engineers and wetlands. Anyway, last year was able to complete that, or this last winter season, I guess. So that's what this is, and that's part of this here. This is what it looked like last week, actually, so it's doing really well. This is what it looked like after they completed it, so there wasn't any vegetation starting back in there yet. There's a lot of phragmites down here we sprayed, trying to keep them out so it doesn't block it off and create some problems. This is another project. It's over here on 12th. This one, that says 12th West. It should say 12th South. I got them backwards. It's just this project to get some water out of the canal and gives a place to dump it going downstream. This is just kind of a overflow weir so water can go over and down that pipe when they get too much water in the ditch. Some other projects that we've done recently is the East Center Street. Steve kind of talked about that. And there's some on 8th West from the hospital going north. Spring Water Park, that's one picture I showed you at the buses, where the bus was out there. That there's been upgraded and fixed. Can you think of anything else that's happened recently, Chris? Those are kind of the main ones we've done most recently.
On that bottom picture right there, that's Taylor Drain, right?
That is.
Yeah, what, is that, as you're looking out there, that's the lake heading out to the west, right?
Yeah, I'm standing here shooting to the west.
And what culvert is that?
That's the one we paid them to put in.
Okay.
It's a crossing.
So
right
it's dry upstream of that.
You got a little bit of water going through, but yeah, there's not a lot of water, but this here was draining the impounded water the Taylor family was worried about. And that's Reed standing right there. Isn't that Reed?
Yep.
Way to go, Reed.
Checking the project out.
Evidence, Reed does get out of the office sometimes. Some upcoming projects. They're designing a project to take water from the east side of the city down in the Fort South area to the Provo River. It's partially designed, but there's some talk it might change a little bit. We're doing some work down around the new Heritage Park area where they're drilling the well on 4th South and 4th West. That'll be a combination tank overflow and maybe a well flush line as well as a storm drain line. And then we're trying to find a way to get rid of some water on the east side of Center Street area, maybe taking it to the east. That's been talked about. There's some options on what to do there. We are focusing a lot on getting water out of the canals because the West Union Canals told us they're going away, and now that the North Union Canal is talking that way, and so there's just going to be some problems where we've historically put storm water. We're having to find some different alternatives because those ditches are going away. You have any questions?
That was a very good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything I missed you'd like to bring up?
I think you did a perfect job.
Okay. Thank you.
Good.
So among the three larger utilities that we have in Public Works, stormwater is the smallest in terms of overall infrastructure when you compare it to like water or sewer. You know, there isn't a plant involved. The number of miles of pipe is around 60 or so.
92.
Was it 92? Whereas in water, we're up almost to 500 miles of pipe, and sewers around 300 miles of pipe. So that kind of gives you a relative picture. But we do have challenges with it. We're trying to protect our wellhead areas. We have 10 wells in the city. Once number of well 10 is going to be drilled here shortly. But we are concerned about injection in those areas relative to those locations of those wells. And so it's a combined, comprehensive division, the Water Resources Division, because there's a lot of regulatory influence by the state, by the EPA, that overlaps with the Clean Water Act for stormwater or for sewer or for water. So I think we have a pretty comprehensive and a well-maintained system. And there are demands, as Rick mentioned, when developments go in, that increases stormwater. And we have to have a solution on every single site. And they have to commit to agree to maintain that, so that we're trying to keep as much stormwater on the site that the water falls on. Per more recent regulations, I think, requirements that were given to us.
The outflow regulations, or the amount of water they had to retain, is a recent regulation, but for probably 5 years, 6 years before that, the city had kind of thought ahead a little bit and actually required them to retain 0.3 inches, where the new standard is 0.5, so we kind of jumped in a little bit early, which helped, but it didn't solve the problems of the existing infrastructure.
So what is the number one problem that you see residents causing? That you know, where we, you know, if you could say, hey, all of our residents need to stop doing this or need to start doing this, what would you like to see change?
You know, that's actually an excellent question. We talked early on about the history of NPDES, UPDES, where it come from. When they first started this program, they targeted what they call stormwater runoff from a specific site, you know, and point source, the Genevas of the world, or the feedlots, those types of things. And what they found was the water quality around the nation wasn't getting a lot better. And so they kind of decided is going to start looking at non-point solution, which is you and I in our homes, you know, on these littler sites. Because they finally determined, or they believe, that there's more pollution coming from these individual sites, even though you can't say it comes from here, like you can with Geneva still, because you can see it coming out the pipe. And that's where the problem is. And so that's a great question. And so the things that we see that homeowners could do better with is we see oil sometimes in sumps. People will drain oil into their sumps, whether they pull up there and drain it or dump it in there. We see a lot of paint in sumps. Believe it or not, grass clippings is a pretty good pollutant because it has a lot of nitrates in it, and that's, you know, it gets washed down to the lake, then that's what causes some of the algal bloom. And so there's some problems like that, but it's just a careless dumping, whether it's out in the gutter or whatever. A lot of people view that as a place to get rid of their garbage.
Yeah.
Especially if they live by the canal
Yeah.
or a ditch, they dump it in.
I had a neighbor once I was driving by, and he was dumping out his charcoal grill down the sump. I'm like, hold up, what are you doing? I'm like, you can't be doing that. Oh, I'm just, you know, it's just a drain inlet here. And I'm like, yeah, it's a drain inlet. You can't be dumping your garbage down there. So, but there's extensive public education and outreach. I mean, Slow the Flow has done an excellent job with water. We've done, the EPA and other affiliates have done a lot of really good jobs with stormwater management. For example, you've probably seen the guy, he's in the storm drain and then he comes out and there's grass all over him and whatever, and it's just, you know, these kinds of educational efforts and opportunities we have are really important. Some might not feel like they're that, maybe that successful, but I think it's impactful. You know, the little jingle with Slow the Flow and stuff, I mean, I remember that. It's in my mind. It's been there for 20 years now. So public education is critical and important. If we can get people on their individual properties just to maintain their own property, don't blow the clippings out into the street, clean their gutters in front of their house, things along those lines are really important for individual residential properties.
Earlier I told you I'd show you this map and I didn't. This is a sweeper map. It's on the city website, and so anyone can look at this and access it. These white ones represent streets that hasn't been swept on this round, and the different colors represents the days that they'll most likely be in an area. And these colors are based on 2 days following garbage pickup day, so the garbage cans are kind of going. So in this green area, for example, they would most likely be up there on a Friday or perhaps a Monday. That's be 2 days after garbage or 3 days after garbage. Today being Tuesday, they'll be in this area right here. It's just about getting finished up. And tomorrow they'll probably finish up these two areas. So this round here is just about getting finished up for the year, or for this cycle, and then we'll start again. So if people want to see, even when they was there, and we'll get calls of people will say, I've lived here for 30 years, and I've never seen a sweeper on my street, you know, but we bring this up, and we can actually see the date when we zoom in and give it a minute. That tells us what sweeper was there and what their date was they was there. And then we can also go back and add.
It's some erratic driving there, Rick.
I know.
I think I get launched too.
That's a rough intersection.
That is.
Whoa.
But it gives you an idea of how many times they've been through there, you know. Anyone can see this, and it's kind of nice to have that access. And when people call and ask us if we got a schedule, it's pretty tough to get a schedule. We got one sweeper operator today going training, and one helping our traffic section with some railroad crossings where the state come down and done an inspection and found some discrepancies on cleanliness, you know. So that, or if someone calls and said we got a car accident, we have so many things pop up that it'd be almost impossible. Plus, we sweep. A sweeper can sweep maybe as few as 12 lane miles a day, but as many as 20. And so if you try to do a schedule, do you schedule all for 12? And what do you do with the other part of the day when we can get more mileage if we just went, you know? So we don't publish a schedule, we just go through, and hopefully people will have their cars moved on the second round, and we kind of pick everything up. But it's just, the schedule's been asked for. It's just tough to do with our situation with only 2 sweepers. If someone calls in sick, do you skip that area for that round, you know, because to put you a day behind, or just how do you catch back up? So that's kind of difficult. Anyway, anyone can go on and see this. It's kind of nice. Go tell people they can watch this and kind of project when the sweeper's going to be in their area if they want to know. They can just kind of see what, you know, if they're down in this area, I don't know if it'll draw back in the areas tomorrow, they can see that.
You turn the cycle off.
Oh, I turned this cycle off.
Will this show a live feed of where they're driving at that time? Or does it just show a recording of it and then we publish it?
It's a little bit of both. Cody could probably explain it better, but they go out and they have on their iPads and they see the same thing we do.
Yeah.
And as they start streaming, it won't publish live until they stop and update. So every hour or so when they stop and update, it'll show on their red.
Okay.
And then they can see where they're sweeping right then. But it's like depends on how often they publish it or update it. Maybe a 2-hour delay, something like that.
What's cool about that is iPads are free. We don't actually put sensors on the trucks, so they're actually tracking with an iPad in the cab. And so, like Rick said, we use an online arc map is what it's called, where the driver, as he starts sweeping, he turns it on and it starts recording his track. And as he goes down through the subdivision for an hour, whatever he chooses to do, when he stops and picks that head up of the sweeper, he hits stop, it publishes it right then live, and you'll see a red line on there. So it's not live, but it's, you know, it's pretty, if you was to watch it throughout the day, you could kind of start to see where they've been as they're publishing and kind of predict where they're going to be next. And so they kind of do a route. The colors that are on the map are garbage cycles, but they do kind of do a clockwise pattern. And so you can kind of see, you know, if you're worried about your street being swept, you can kind of predict when they're going to be there if you pay attention.
So for instance, if I live up in the northern end of that green section,
Yeah.
I can sort of assume they're going to show up on Fridays.
Well, that's changed a little bit in that we went to the 410 schedule,
Okay.
and so we probably need to update this a little bit, but we don't work on Fridays currently.
Okay.
And so it's going to be a Thursday or Monday, most likely Monday.
Thursday, Monday. Okay.
The map says Friday, Monday. The thought, and like Rick said, stormwater just recently changed to that 410 Monday through Thursday for sweepers, and so we do need to adjust it. But where was I going with that? But the way it was set up was saying 2 days after garbage day, if they don't get to it, because we were having one sweeper operator work on Monday and one working on Friday. Now they're both working on Monday, and so we were getting that coverage. But yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, you can predict. If you watch it, you can start to predict when
Do they do it after garbage just to catch spillage, or? is
Not,
there a reason
not
for it?
necessarily for that. We want to do all the streets, but garbage cans get left
Cans
out.
away.
And they have to go around them and around them. And
Gotcha.
even doing it one day after, there's a lot of garbage cans left out.
Still sitting.
And there's some, they're more in the rental areas, but it's not exclusive to that where they'll leave them out. They'll never take them in. And it makes it very difficult for them to sweep in those areas.
What's the average speed of a sweeper?
So they sweep at like 3 miles an hour, 2.5, 3 miles an hour.
The G-forces are incredible.
Their G-forces come from people trying to cut them off and they have to slam on the brakes.
If you have a favorite podcast, it's a good job. Listen to whatever you like.
It's a good program though. It helps aesthetics, but it really helps with the maintenance on the storm drain system.
Some of the new council members, when they get elected and we have orientation, I'm surprised several of them over the years have said, we sure have clean streets. It's just an interesting observation that they've made and recognized that Public Works is responsible for it.
You mentioned earlier what you could take back to, educate residents. That could be one of its garbage stands.
That's true.
We went through,
That's true.
when this was developed, we were actually, our operators were pretty frustrated with the garbage cans, and we were trying to tag them and like try to put door hangers on people's houses just to kind of encourage them to put the cans away. And it just got to be pretty crazy, and it just made sense. Why are we trying to sweep the streets that close to garbage days? So it helps.
Yeah. One other public education thing I was going to mention, forgot, is we participate with the county coalition, and that coalition has hired an instructor that goes around and teaches all the 5th grades in the county schools. And I think that the reports we get back from that, or when we talk to people at Summerfest when they come talk to us, is the kids will come up and say, yeah, I remember this in school. But I think if we can educate the children, and they can help educate their parents, sometimes that's more efficient than us trying to educate their parents. So over the long run, I think that's a good approach, is to get in and educate the school children.
Okay.
There is some schools that refuse. They won't. There's like 2 or 3 in the county that won't let them come in, but the rest of them go in.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks,
Chris.
Rick. We could set up a date and a time for our next meeting. If we're looking at 2 months out, that'd be about November 15th, which would be the 3rd Tuesday of the month. If that
Okay.
works for everybody's on their calendars. Is this a good time for everybody here? 7 o'clock on a Tuesday?
Yeah.
It's worked in the past, but we have a lot of new people. Of course, many of them are not here right now, but if that looks okay on your calendars, let's shoot for that time. We'll send out a notice.
November 15th.
We'll send out the minutes for this as well. At that meeting, we'll need to approve then minutes for our last meeting and also for today. Pardon?
Technically, we don't need to do it today. It's no, since we have a
Oh.
quorum, it's considered notes only.
Well, we'll still provide.
I'll still give you the minutes, but.
You give us the notes.
I'll give you the notes. but
And we'll
you won't
provide
have to
Rick's
approve it.
presentation as well.
Well, I approve the notes.
Interesting notes.
Be in that one because of surgery.
Okay. All right, thanks for letting us know. I think that's all the business that we have.
All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Second? So let it be.
All right. Well,
Thanks,
thank you
Chris.
all. And we'll
Thanks,
shoot
Rick.
for the 15th. We'll send you out the information for this next meeting.
Good luck.
Okay.
What if there's a way that maybe I can send an email out and encourage the members to be here?
Yeah, you can reply all on that
So
You can.
if you'd like. I think I need to do the same as
Yeah, I
well.
do too.
In fact, I think that's Gary
I do
right
too.
there, who just showed up.
it's no fun.
We could have approved the minutes, but we'll just do it next time.
Okay.
Did he just barely come in?
Yeah,
He
he
just
just
walked in.
walked in.
Yeah,
Okay.
all right.
So I have a question. I remember from a couple of years ago, stormwater folks talking about hunting down somebody who was dumping something in the stormwater drain, and it was causing tons and tons of grief. And they were literally searching all over the city, trying to hunt down this.
I think that was a sewer system, not the storm sewer system. They
Yeah.
were dumping it in the sewer.
Yeah.
And it eventually just stopped.
They never found them?
Not that I'm aware of, like, it just
Okay.
stopped.
Okay.
That was the sewer system.
Oh, that was sewer, not stormwater. Okay.
Yep.
If we can make it a multi-purpose, property.